Hello, everyone. It's Deborah Poneman, founder of Yes to Success Seminars, where we share knowledge and tools for you to live your ultimate life. And to everyone in the US, I hope you had a very happy Thanksgiving. And to all my friends of the Jewish faith, I trust that your Hanukkah has been miraculous. So, as I was contemplating what to share with you today, I realized that in the year plus that I've been sharing these Success Saturdays, I've never shared even one of my stories, some of which have been published, many have not, but all are true. And they give you a slice of life. Well, they give you a slice of my life and perhaps even a lesson. So I thought for a change of pace, I'm going to share one of my stories with you today. And this is called The Little Thieves. I don't have it memorized, so I will be reading it to you. So it's story time, true story time. Here we go. It was the end of 2004, and I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference in India. Since India was my favorite place for having memorably bizarre escapades and profound personal awakenings, I said yes. Shortly after accepting the gig and purchasing the non-refundable airline tickets at my client's expense, I discovered that I would be in India during the exact 3 weeks of my daughter Diana's 10th grade January short term. During January short term, regular classes were suspended while students worked on projects of personal interest, like exploring career paths or volunteering for a nonprofit, something that was meaningful to them. I figured a great January short-term project would be for Diana to become personally interested in women's empowerment, specifically in India. And while we were there, we would be able to dig up some meaningful volunteer work or perhaps a career path for her to explore. So instead of leaving her home for 3 weeks, all day, unsupervised, doing God knows what, I purchased her a companion ticket. Several days before we were to leave, the conference was canceled because of the tsunami that had devastated South India just days before, but we decided we would go anyway. Although Westerners are not allowed to help out at the site of the tsunami, our volunteer time was productive as we taught English at an ashram school to classrooms overflowing with bright-eyed, beautiful, barefoot children. We also worked to help set up a U.S. distribution for a cooperative of women who used to live on the streets, but now made the most exquisite purses, hand embroidered with ohms and lotuses, and even an occasional Lakshmi or two. Yes, we had not only pulled off the mother of all January short terms, but had filled ourselves with the usual India phenomenon that we know and loved, like the 4-star hotel with no heat or hot water, where the blankets were drowning in mothballs, and we were given one small threadbare towel to share between the two of us, or the tiny golden temple, where we were greeted by a radiant 104-year-old sadhu with a monkey on his shoulder and a snake around his neck, but not one wrinkle on his beautiful face. And just before our adventure came to an end, we had our never fail, why you came to India, life-changing experience. An experience so humbling that it forever altered the way we saw the world and judged its inhabitants. Wherever we went during our weeks in Mother India, we became magnets for the little children who roamed the back alleys and main thoroughfares begging for money. There wasn't any way we could say no to these darling little dirty faces when all they were asking for was the equivalent of about 25 cents to feed themselves for a day or two. But after a while, it got tiring, especially when the same little street urchins managed to find us day after day, no matter what obscure route we tried to take back to our hotel. And they always told us the same story, which, despite the language barrier, they managed to convey so effectively that I lamented that they were not on my team when we played charades on Thanksgiving. Their story was that they needed the money to buy food for their little brothers or sisters who were either standing beside them or balanced on their hips. The story became harder to believe after the locals told us not to give them even 1 rupee and that they were all little thieves or were being used as pawns by the gangsters. The night before we were to return to Chicago, our favorite little duo, 8-year-old Saraswati and her 3-year-old brother Ganesh, appeared out of nowhere just as we were about to enter the door of our hotel. Saraswati was beaming as she patted Ganesh's middle, indicating that our rupees had put a hearty meal in his little malnourished stomach, and she wanted more. But we had now been warned, and we were hip to her tricks. And this time, when we looked at her sincere face and that of her brother sitting on her tilted hip, all we saw were 2 little thieves. We told her absolutely no more money. The jig was up. She was confused at the changed demeanor, but she was undeterred. The little thief was on a mission, and she would not take no for an answer as she pantomimed the story of having no parents, living in the street, and that she didn't use any of the money for herself, but couldn't bear to see her brother go without food. As the tears streamed down her face, my daughter and I concurred that they must have opted for an acting elective in Indian thievery school. And then Diana and I hatched a plan of our own. We would give her the money and follow her as she went down the alley to hand it over to the mob boss. And we'd read him the riot act for exploiting these vulnerable children, or bust her when she used the money to buy herself some Indian rock candy. So we gave her the exact amount of rupees for Ganesh's cereal. We held out a handful of change and she took what she needed, or so she said. And we stealthily followed her down the block, across the dung-filled street, and into a dark alley where she determinedly walked into a dilapidated grocery store dimly lit by a few bare fluorescent tubes, went over to the cereal aisle, carefully put Ganesh down on the floor, climbed up the shelf like an agile little monkey, found a dusty box of toddler cereal, picked up Ganesh, and walked to the checkout line. The proprietor had already begun yelling at her, calling her names of which I could only guess the translation by the hate in his eyes as he grabbed her rupees and shooed her out of the store with her baby brother in one arm and her treasured box of cereal in the other. Once outside, she opened the box and fed her brother until he was full without taking even 1 crumb for herself. Diana and I will forever be moved by the image that remains in our memories of little Saraswati ever so gently and lovingly putting her brother down so that she could climb the shelf and get him his cereal, and the unflinching dignity of her 8-year-old self as she walked out of the store, head held high, paying no attention to the ranting proprietor, feed her sweet brother, close the box, and take his tiny hand as they headed down the dark, dark alley and were swallowed up by the night and the streets that were their home. The end.